you.
Thanks, Veronica. Morning, everyone. Great to see so many people turned out on a Saturday morning, a drizzly Saturday morning here. So I think what I'd like to talk about a little bit is just about the specifics of our sort of sharing care project, which is a sort of a strand of activity that we've been developing alongside all of the sort of practicalities of setting up and running the care cooperative. Veronica's kindly put the link to the site in the chat. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen if I can and show you a bit about that and talk around what we're doing there, because that website is a sort of a bit of a hub really for a lot of the stuff that we're doing there. So what we found from quite an early position really in terms of our history, our development, I hope everyone can see that, is that it became very clear very early on that we wanted this thing to be quite a small thing and keep it local because of all the benefits that we saw from that sort of approach. And so what that meant was that we took on board very early on the idea that there would probably, if we were going to be successful, there would be lots of localized care co-ops and not just one or two. And then that sort of got us to thinking, well, if that's the case, then what's really important for us is to make sure that we've got some shared resources so that we can help other communities who want to do something similar. We can help them to get started more quickly, and we can help them to avoid some of the errors and pitfalls that we came across during our development program. And the whole thing came out of that really. And obviously, because we've have global ambitions for world domination in social care, we wanted to see how far we could take this thing. And we had an idea that we could create some sort of specialized development group that could promote the ideas of what we're doing and maybe convince some local authorities that it's a really good idea and maybe get their support and maybe draw some more funding into the program and build the thing up in that sort of way. And we talked to Power to Change about this idea, and because we'd already had a relationship with them because they gave us a little bit of startup funding through their Bright Ideas program. So we talked to them about this and they seemed really interested, which is great. And they gave us a bit of money, which is even better, which has enabled us to get this thing off the ground. So sort of building on this idea of sort of a strawberry patch type development model, lots of little co-ops all networked together. The idea of, the original term was replicate and federate is what we used. And that's sort of evolved into what is now the sharing care project. And also sort of a recognition, I guess, for people that might have heard Gareth Nash talk on Thursday morning, I think it was, about the sort of history of the Cooperative Care Forum over the sort of last decade or so. It's very clear that while we might be innovating in some respects, we're also standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us. So it's a sort of a sense really there that it's quite important for us to leave something behind in terms of what we're doing. And I'm really pleased that we're developing a bit of a resource around that, so that people who come up after us and want to do same sorts of things as we're doing have got maybe something that can help them to get started. And it's great that Sandra, you're here, for example, on the call from Preseli. So, I mean, obviously, you've got the massive benefit of having the Wales Cooperative Centre supporting you. So there's every chance that you'll be hugely successful, and we'll be able to learn from you. So just to sort of tell you a little bit more about the detail, I suppose. So we thought it was important that we documented our journey, or tried to, so that we could sort of learn as we go, and also it's very easy to forget things as you're going down that sort of development journey, and you forget some of the challenges maybe that you overcame, or some of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of. So trying to sort of keep a bit of a record of that, we thought was a useful exercise. So we came up with this idea of, okay, well, we'll sort of document it. We'll put things together in a website, and we'll do a series of events. Obviously, this original thinking was all pre-COVID, so we had this grand plan of running some events, and the events of the last few days. This Celebrating Cooperative Care online conference, essentially, that we're having at the moment. The original idea was that would be a face-to-face event, but obviously we've been stymied in that respect, and had to sort of cut our cloth to some degree. But I think these things have their upsides as well. So I think it's been great that we've, over these last 3 days, we've been able to see and meet people from right across the country, perhaps otherwise couldn't have got involved in a physical face-to-face type event. So documenting our journey, learning as we go. I'm sure that some of the stuff that we've written down and that's on this website is already out of date, and has been superseded by better information as we go along, and as we learn more and realize just how naive we might have been a couple of years ago on some of this stuff. But that's all to the good. I think the fact that it's there means that we can improve on it.
Can I just say, absolutely, I need to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, thanks.
Good that you've documented them.
Yeah, well, we're trying to do that, certainly. And the key thing, is about sort of accelerating that process for other people. It's taken us 3 years or more to go from the original discussion that said, let's try and do something around social care because it's a real challenge, it's a real issue for us, not just in our community, but we can see that there are broader issues right across our society for social care. So that first conversation happened 3 more years ago, and now we're a few months into the sharp end of actually delivering service and understanding all of the implications around that. So if we can help shorten that process for others, then that's all to the good. And also help other people who might be able to achieve a sort of successful, sustainable operation more quickly as a result of that as well. So if I just sort of whiz through some of the stuff that's on this website. So we've sort of structured it into what we call a toolkit at the moment, various different sections about that look at different bits of the operation. So right from that early bit about sort of getting your steering group together and and your sort of group of collaborators, that might drive the thing forward, how you might consult with your community and build a bit of a crowd around the idea and gather that broader support, how you might get some care professionals on board. At the outset, I don't think any of us, the original sort of small group, were sort of actively involved in the sector at all. We came at it as a sort of a total bunch of naive idiots, with a sort of a spark of an idea and a bit of an issue to campaign about. And as we've gone further in, we've attracted people who clearly have an enormous amount of expertise and experience in care, either as people who draw on care services or providers, and in Sue's case, who's our nominated individual, you know, Sue's been in the care sector for a whole of her professional life, and there's an enormous amount of expertise to offer us. So yeah, we've been able to attract those people to our idea, and that's, for me, that speaks volumes that, you know, okay, perhaps we've actually got something here that that's got some real value and some real legs. People will sort of keep popping up and saying, "Oh yeah, that looks good." So that works for us. Yeah, so the toolkit goes on through, you know, how you can get organized, how you can do your sort of do some engagement with community and get your message out. We've got some stuff that we're working on now about funding and the whole sort of community share issue stuff that we did, and which we actually decided to go down that road at quite an early stage, and that actually means that you have to think about your legal structure, because only, you know, certain legal structures will enable you to do a community share offer in the way that we did. So getting that sort of advice and guidance in early on is really, really important. And that all the work that we did, I'm going to say we, it wasn't me, all the work that happened in order to get us CQC registered, which is obviously you know, a critical piece of the jigsaw, and getting through that process. So there's a load of stuff on the website that we've put in place, and it's there as a sort of a skeleton, as a bit of a framework, really. And I would encourage you to have a read through that, and I would encourage you, you know, what I want to do more than anything in this little session that we've got here is to invite you to engage with that and be part of that work that helps to build out this resource, because it was clear to us right from day one that we had a lot to learn, and we still do have a lot to learn. And so what this resource is designed to do, really, much more than give out information, it's designed to draw in information. So what we want is for the people on this call and the other people that we've been fortunate enough to engage with over the last months and years, to get them involved and to say, you know, let's use this resource together to share our information, because I know with absolute certainty that the people in Preseli have got information and knowledge and expertise that we don't have, and I'm very, very keen to be able to draw on that. And the people here from the Ealing Care Cooperative, the exact same is true in your case. You know, you've got experience and knowledge and expertise that we are very keen to learn about and use. And if we can all share that stuff together, then we can build up a body of expertise, I think, that will enable us to go much further, much faster. And the website, if you can see on your screen, there's a little thing there on the right hand side where it says, you know, you can apply for a user account on this website. So if I thought it might be useful just to spend a couple of minutes to show you what it looks like, a bit more of what it looks like when you actually log in. So I've got a user account on this website and I'll log into it, and then I can start writing content. So I can just create a page on the website if I wanted to. And it's just like using a word processor. It's very straightforward. I can just type stuff in, or I can paste stuff in. I can add images, and I can publish that information. And what we've got there is a simple system whereby we can give people user accounts onto this website, people that we trust, and let them create content, and then we can work with them to work out how best that content's going to fit into the website and add value to the resource. So it's a sort of a knowledge base, if you want, for cooperative care. So we're open to anyone that wants to add content into that mix. We're very open to people that want to change what's already there because it's not very good, because we recognize that what's there is full of gaps and is largely a sort of a first stab at things, and it's incomplete and it's fragmented. So there's an enormous amount of stuff that we want to do to improve that, but we can't do it ourselves. Obviously, we need your help on that. So I'll stop the share now so I can see everyone again. And I can see Mark's got his hand up already with a question. So do you want to go, Mark?
Yes, sure. Can I just check that my volume is okay? You can hear me without it breaking up. Just 1 second. Bit of background noise. I'm just going to turn it off. It's the fan. So as long as that's clear. It's basically, there's two questions. I'll deal with the first one, which was basically an idea, Graham. I think this, what you put together is absolutely excellent. I'm sure that everybody, particularly those starting off in a cooperative, setting up a cooperative, will be damn pleased it's there, because I'm sure you know from personal experience that when you kick off, you tend to think it's a bit of a lonely position. So, you know, knowing that you've actually got others surrounding you that have gone through the same things, that's great. It's a great morale booster apart from anything else. We have heard, if I understand, from various speakers, that some councils are very good at support, others are not so good, and some maybe are bad. And the thought has occurred to me that if there's a little bit of promotion of this website in terms of making it known that, you know, this is what is happening in the, I'll use the term industry just very loosely,
Sure.
Then it'll become more known. It can become a platform for receiving and collating information that you're looking for. You might even wish to broaden it out to receive information from other people interested in social care that are scanning the web, for example. But the thought occurred to me, if we post up there the experience of people in dealing with their local councils, particularly in terms of spend, then it sort of hopefully will catch on once it becomes known that they're getting. It's a bit like getting a diploma. Yeah, you passed the test, you did well. But it also highlights those that are not so good, and especially if the local authority, those that officers in that organisation become aware, and they want to jolly their own council along. It might stir them to want to join those that are on the good list. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's an
Right.
interesting idea.
Okay. So that was just basically an idea. And what was the second? Sorry. Happens sometimes. Perhaps I better pass over to somebody. There was a second point, so maybe I'll come back to that, because right at this moment I've lost it. So I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. That happens to me all the time. Yeah, so that's really interesting. I think so I think that I just wanted to say that I don't want people, have a look at that website, and I'm very keen that we work as a group, as a network, as a federation, to develop that as a resource that's useful to everyone. So you might not like the structure of it. You might think, oh, it's missing all this stuff. Why isn't it talking about that? It should be talking about all this stuff. Those are all valid questions, and we're very, very keen. To hear those points. And sort of work with you. So if you've got things, that you think should be on there, then let's hear them. And even more so, if you've got a bit of time and energy to actually write some stuff down, even if you get sort of a technophobe or whatever and don't want to get involved in putting content onto the website directly, that's fine. You can just send us the stuff and we'll do the nasty bits. That's fine. That's not a problem. But I mean, for example, Sandra came up with a brilliant idea earlier. Let's have a map of all these care co-ops. I mean, I know, I'm a bit of a technical nerd on some of this stuff. I've just been working on a similar project for somebody else recently, and we just did a map of some groups. So I know it's really easy to do it. So yes, we'll have a map of care cooperatives that we know about. We'll do that. I'm really excited by that. We've been talking internally about our policy documents, and thinking, well, how can we have a situation where our staff, all the people that are working for Colne Valley Cooperative Care, need to provide some evidence that they've actually read some of the policy documents. How can we do that? All right, well, we can use this website to do that. So we can put the policy documents behind a form, or make the policy document itself into a form that they have to fill in the form to say, yeah, I've read this document now. So we've got a record that they've read the document. All those 147 policy documents, or whatever it was that Sue was talking about earlier, a vast amount of work that went into pulling all that documentation together and making it available so that we could show the CQC that we were up together and serious about what we're doing. All of that stuff can go onto this website, and we can share all that stuff, so that other co-ops that come down the track don't have to write all that stuff. Why? That's just madness, isn't it? Having to write all that stuff from scratch. Surely much easier to share that stuff. Training materials for staff, back office IT systems, and the whole thing just sort of moves into what we were talking about yesterday in terms of the federation, in terms of the network that we were talking about. All of that stuff can just grow out of this as we move down the track. So that's my sort of ambition and vision for what this can become as a useful resource for all of us, and also as a sort of a promotional tool, the sort of thing that Mark was talking about there. We can create some pages on this website which are geared towards, I'm a I'm an elected officer and I need some advice on, is this stuff actually credible, or present some information around that. Comments, questions?
Graham, I thought of the second point, if I may.
Oh, go on then, Mark. Yeah.
It's the fact that my other hat is I sit on the committee of the Ealing Reclaim Social Care Action Group, who it's a very small group, a great bunch of people, and they do excellent work in terms of monitoring and transparency within the Ealing Borough and the Ealing Council. We have a very good relationship with them. I'm a little bit more skeptical, but that's because of my personal experience with organizations that seem to sometimes say the right things, look, shake your hand and say great, 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 and then don't actually fulfill the promise. And I had a bad experience, so that's left me. However, I'm still sort of optimistic, and I applaud all the work. However, I've always known that we're a little bit short on how we present what we've found and what we know to the general public in a way that will benefit them, right? And that's of importance to me, because we all know that meetings are great, but what's the point if all you do is just meet and talk? You want to achieve something. So I tend to try and focus on getting nearer to an end result. And this has been on my mind for some time. And also because I'm on the board of the Ealing Co-op, how to marry that up with what they want to do at some point in the future, which is to promote what Ealing Co-op is doing and what co-ops generally throughout the UK are doing. And it seems like both those two organisations could marry up very well. And what we need, I think, is an agreed dialogue, because I, on a personal level, if I'm tutored, because I appreciate that although sometimes I tend to speak from the heart, and it can be a bit too much sometimes at meetings that should need to be more structured. So I need a bit of training in public speaking, but I'm quite prepared to do that. I want to go out into the community and actually inform them, and I'm quite prepared to do the running around. Not everybody will come to us. Not everybody will even attend a public meeting. Not everybody who would like to can do that. So I'm thinking in general terms of putting the news to the people where it's best suited for the people, which may be, talking in a care home setting, for example, talking to a direct payment users group, this sort of thing. So the reason for bringing this point up here at this particular junction, Graham, was do you think that maybe this is something else that could come within the remit of what you're trying to do, that you might request input for that kind of dialogue, which could then be tailored and used throughout the UK by those who wish to do the same thing? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That's a good point. Yeah. So again, I think this is just for me, this is another type of resource that we could be sharing through this tool that we've created, through this platform. So if you obviously at the end of the day, if you're trying to get a message out in your locality and trying to raise issues and get debate and discussion going, it's all about those local relationships. But and by and large, people are doing that in a voluntary capacity. So if they've got resources that they can draw on that make life easier for them to do that, just in terms of maybe some talking points or a slide deck or a template for a leaflet, or anything like that can be really, really useful and a time saver. So absolutely, totally open to any of that sort of thinking. And it's just, it comes down to us as a collective of people to sort of work together and collaborate to build that resource out. So thanks again, Mark. Lionel, moving on to you, if I might.
Hi, well done, Graham. It's a great start. I mean, it's fantastic how much you've got on there. I really like the straightforward interface and the clarity of it. I'm not really a techie, but I'm pretty comfortable with that sort of interface. So maybe I might apply for a user account and I could help and do some stuff. So it looks straightforward. I think I'll struggle with probably the writing, but I don't mind helping. I don't mind helping with maintenance. And I used to work with intranets and websites internally for companies, and so I've got some knowledge, some like search or information architecture skills.
Great.
And I have a suggestion, a couple of suggestions. The about page where you just talk about Con Valley, maybe you could rename that something like, about all of us, and have all the co-ops on the about page, so it can be really broadened out and have the map there as well. So that's one idea. And the other is, there's lots. I mean, it's great that you've got the recordings of all the sessions that you've held over previous months there. And I was wondering whether a kind of it's all about helping people find stuff. So they might look through and at first glance not realize all the great subjects that you've talked about in previous months, as well as, of course, these sessions. And I'm wondering whether, it's really hard to work out how best to help people find stuff, but some page that has almost a subject index, like a high level contents index of, like the way tags are used, where each page would have 2 or 3 tags. So you could have somewhere where you could, I know some people just like to search, but I'm a fan of having things already on a page. So sort of, 30 different tags you might have, and there might be 3 different videos that have covered that subject, and then you can list those out. So I don't know quite how best to do that without making it really long-winded, but it might be worth the effort.
I think it certainly is, yeah. And we particularly chose the software platform that we're using with all that sort of stuff in mind. So it's very, very good.
Right.
If we want to create tags, classifications, taxonomies, whatever you want to call them, it's all there waiting for us to dig in and make use of all that stuff. And the search facility as it stands is pretty good. I'm sure that we can do lots of stuff with the overall navigation and make life easier and clearer as we go. And as you say, stuff like the about page, that was probably written 18 months ago and now needs totally trashing and rewriting from scratch because of where we're now at. So that's fantastic input. I very much look forward to working with you on that stuff. That'd be brilliant.
Cool.
Thanks again. Chris, hi. Morning, Chris.
Hi, Graham. Yeah, I thought I'd just pop in again and say hello. And it's really first time I'd actually seen, really nitty gritty what you've been doing, Graham. So it's conversation we should have had a long, long time ago. But thanks very much for that. Now, I just thought I'd chuck something into the pot in terms of, you mentioned the word federation. I like the word confederation, and the difference I would say is that confederation is bottom up and federation can be somewhat top down, So Switzerland is bottom up. Most people don't even know who the first minister is in Switzerland, for instance, whereas most other countries are sort of top down. Anyway, putting that to one side, I came up with a word 10 years ago of non-dominium. I think I mentioned this yesterday, which is basically a framework within which no stakeholder has dominant power over any other. And that was a sort of legal design of an agreement not an organization, an agreement I came up with 10 years ago. And I now have a site. I just posted a link to that. And basically what we're looking at is a framework agreement. Let's call it Care Unlimited. I love the word unlimited, right? You know, an unlimited company. The original companies were not limited. They weren't even incorporated. There were people who came together for a common purpose, you know, merchant venturers and things like that. And I love the original form of company and the word companion that goes with it. That's what companies always were until this artificial legal person concept came along and started buggering things up. Anyway, so imagine an agreement. Let's call it Care Unlimited. And within that agreement, you have care users. Think of a guild or a company of service users. Think of a guild or a company of service providers, and think of a guild or a company of people who actually invest money or money's worth into care in one way or another. And the key to it is, I think, to have, there are two elements. You need a custodian who is the, you know, if you like, the guardian of the purpose, who has an active right to say no, the ultimate right to say no. And then you need a steward, and I see, or a developer, and I see the role of everybody gathered here, the activists gathered here, as being people taking an active role, maybe providing quality control, maybe providing services, etc., etc., etc. And I see these as stakeholder groups, and I see it as possible within the sort of framework I describe to come up with something rather like an association of associations or cooperative of cooperatives. But it's not a corporate. It's not, you know, a legal person in those terms. It's an agreement to a common purpose. I even applied 22 years ago for a top level domain. This is in the business I was in, .oil, long before it was even possible to think about it. And I just looked just now at .care. Imagine you got your own domain, .care, right? Well, it's been done. I hate to tell you this, and it's American surgeons and people like that probably extracting huge amounts of money out of people using it. But the idea of having a domain that you come to, an agreement, a framework agreement within which people are members. You don't have a contract with it, you are members. And through that, you participate. Now, I'm just putting down my sort of vision as to how it could be, but that's essentially how I see it potentially working. And what you are doing, Graham, and everybody here is providing the wisdom and the potential services. What Emma is doing, I was just blown away by what Emma is doing with the teams and the circles and whatnot. It's amazing, amazing stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the future lies. I really do think so. To get away from the fragmentation of legal persons and commercial in confidence and rent seeking and middlemen. I've said my lots. You know what I'm like, Graham. I go on and on and on. So I'll shut up now.
Thanks very much, Chris. That's a great contribution. Cheryl, you've put your hand up. Great. Are you with us, Cheryl? Yeah,
I am with us, but I'm very slow because I'm not well today.
Okay.
I want to agree absolutely with Chris. I'm a co-founder of the Cooperative Guild of Social and Community Workers, and we have no legal personality and we never want one. And we work very much in the way that Chris has described, because we are social workers and community workers who are cooperators, and therefore we have collectivized in order to work together so that we can support people either in the public, the private, or the personal realm to be social workers who are cooperative in their practice, or community workers who are cooperative in their practice, wherever that practice may be. It's a mutually supportive organisation. I was also a member of the forum that Co-ops UK provided the secretariat for, and it was awful. It was really awful because it did not. It was just a tank of extraction, rather than a collection of people with various experiences, skills, and knowledge that could come together, share together, be mutually supportive, and get behind the idea of what cooperation can bring to care. What it should have been, it never was.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why in Co-ops UK are kind of looking at what they did with fresh eyes to learn from some of those lessons and to be much clearer in what they are supporting and what they're not supporting. And as me and Mervyn mentioned in our slot yesterday, since that happened, since Combe Valley's happened, there are lots of collective around the co-op Commonwealth now of people who have come together because they bring various pieces to the jigsaw that is cooperative care. And what we really need to do is find a way to bring that together. And I love Chris's idea of the non-confederate, because if it becomes exploitative and a legal personality and hierarchical, the people who will be the bottom of that and the most exploited are the disabled and the people who are needing care in order to ensure their full citizenship and participation. It will become just another thing that we have to manage, control, have in our lives that is more oppressive than it is supportive, but we have to manage the oppression in order to get some of the support.
Yeah, no, I think there's lots of sense in that. I think, I mean, I've been involved in a project. Project's probably not the right word, but a piece of work that I started with a friend of mine going back over 10 years now, where we called it the Innovation Cooperative, which was essentially what we could see is that there were lots of interesting things happening, and this sort of barrier that comes up very quickly when you try and do things as a group about, oh, well, we're going to need some sort of legal framework, or we're going to need a bank account, we're going to need this, and we're going to need that, and it all very quickly ramps up and creates a lot of barriers to you actually getting useful things done. We developed the idea of a sort of an umbrella type organization within which lots of much more sort of informal activity could take place. And it sort of it provides a sort of a protective membrane, if you want, against the outside world, so that this sort of stuff can grow and develop at its own pace. It doesn't need to have all of that paraphernalia around it. I mean, it may be that a project could develop to a point where it does make sense to go down that road for all sorts of various reasons. Obviously, at the end of the day, you have to live in the real world, I suppose, and there are lots of constraints on what you can do. So, someone said about if sort of an unincorporated group like that, could that attract funding? Would a funder recognize it as a viable option to invest in? So you need to look at those sorts of issues. But the idea of creating a sort of a cooperative umbrella that removed you from all the harshness of sort of contracts and the legal system in large part, which is very governed by, very sort of adversarial in its approach, and create an environment which is much more cooperative. It's an interesting one, and I'm very keen to pursue that.
Can I quickly interject and just speak to a couple of the questions, one you just mentioned? There's a difference between the structure that you have once you've actually completed the creation of something, and the way in which you can mobilize the necessary finance, call it the development capital. And that is tried and tested. I call it capital partnership. You can use LLPs, frameworks, to develop new productive assets. And I think of the care cooperative as a productive asset in senses which capitalists do not, you know. But to create it, to make it happen, and to bring in the development finance, I think that the existing forms of finance, including BenComs, they work, but they don't scale too well. And the LLP structure has been tried and tested. It's been around 20 odd years. And I think it has immense potential to enable us to bring in the capital that we need to scale rapidly. So I thought I'd just say that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's helpful. Brian, you got a point? Oh, sorry, Lionel.
Thanks. Yeah, I love this idea of the non-dominion agreements and the mutual support that Cheryl and Chris were talking about. But I'm wondering, what are there practices or safeguards that you would think necessary, or that you'd suggest be put in place in kind of worst case, or not worst case, but bad case scenarios where you maybe have strong personalities who are very influential, or people who break the agreements? How do you handle that side of things?
I used to be a regulator, Lionel, of a global exchange at one time, for what that's worth. And your point is very much to the point. You have to have quality control. So that is what one of the roles of the third party, I call them the steward, is exactly what you say. It's the ability to make sure that the service provider and the service user, that there is not, that it's, if you like, a fair relationship between the two. So it is a quality control role, it's a dispute resolution role, it's a facilitation role. There are many, many things the service provider will do. But this form of structure, I mentioned yesterday, the machinery ring in Scotland, where you have the farmers sharing equipment and all sorts of things, and a service provider who actually helps them do it. You know, it's a very simple and and lightweight structure. You know, it doesn't. It's not corporate per se.
Can I just add as well that with my change agents hat on, change agents will be, the guild will be working with Colne Valley so that Colne Valley can acquire the Fair Care mark. And for us, when we work with Colne Valley to look at how you work, how you practice, if it doesn't have that light touch, if it doesn't have that balance in terms of the needs of the people who are delivering the care, the needs of the people who are receiving the care, and if it doesn't reflect the fact that I use care, I give care. As a human being, I am perfectly capable of caring as well as being cared for. If that humanity doesn't sit within the care that is being delivered, it wouldn't reach the Fair Care mark. And part of what people do is, and this is part of the culture now, a very sad part of our culture with credentialism, professionalism, and the box ticking and the transactional nature of most of the stuff that we do. If I was to draw you a circle and put the majority of the people in that circle, those people don't need rules, because their common sense, if you like, their natural conscience and behavior means they behave very well most of the time. We all have our moments, but most of the time they behave very well and mutually between each other. We have evolved to be that way. It helps us if we help other people. It's in our nature. You will have people on the periphery of that circle that the rules are for, because they are the ones who are trying to, you put 1 or 3 or 4 on there, they're the ones making their mind up. Are we going to obey the rules, or are we not going to obey the rules? Because that is part of their personality type. Yeah. Beyond that, you've got a few people, the sociopaths, They ain't going to play the rules, no matter how many rules you impose on the people in the circle who don't need the rules. We're perfectly able to cooperate, to mutual, to give and take as humans. It is inbred in us. And what we do is we stymie the creativity, the relationships of the majority of the people in that circle on behalf of the sociopaths and that can't make their minds up. And so the easiest way is to say to the sociopaths and that can't make your minds up, if you don't want to behave, because it's behaviour that rules are for, if you don't want to behave fairly, if you don't want to take more than you give, if you don't want to be part of this, you get it, you understand it. So this is not about people not understanding, this is about people not agreeing. If you are constantly disagreeable, you're in the wrong circle. So it's perfectly polite and better for them and better for you. Just ask them to join another one.
Thanks, Cheryl. That's great.
Thank you.
Stuart, you got a hand up.
Yeah. So yeah, going back to my response to what Chris said. So he talked about the farmers and machinery rings and how machinery shared between farmers. See, I don't see that there is much that's sort of comparable to that. Okay, yeah, there are some equipment such as, you know, for example, my friend of mine died of coronavirus and she was estranged from her family. So the equipment she had, a bath seat, I gave to the co-op. Yeah. So there is a certain amount of individual equipment like that people need, but it isn't on the scale of farm machinery mostly. I mean, yeah, there may be more expensive stuff, but yeah, the real issue of growing something like an equivalence of Valley Care elsewhere, as you can see, is you've got to put a lot of working capital to get to the stage where you can employ the registered manager and get your CQC registration before you can do anything. And then you've got to grow further before you then get to the block contract threshold of 400 hours per week or whatever it is. And so it's really a need for working capital rather than pieces of equipment largely, although yeah, there are certain pieces of equipment that the individual do need. So it's really more, and when you get working capital, there is always an element of risk. So you've basically got to have people who are willing to support it and take that risk. And yet not expect to make a killing out of it like they on the markets, you know, and stock markets and so on, because even you know, for-profit care providers have been struggling. You know, look at Southern Cross, etc. You know, that's not a way that, you know, the market expects to make lots of money really, in Britain at least. So that's why the community share issue was pretty good, I thought, because it enabled people to do that. And I mean, if there is a better way, or if there's a way of funding a federation that's better, yeah, maybe. But it's not like farm equipment. It's something a lot more subtle than that. And if there was a way really that you could avoid this issue with every single individual co-op having to go through all this thing of you know, getting a registered manager, putting all the working capital up front to do that, and before they can actually start delivering the care. If there's a way around that, that might actually be more valuable than having to have every single one of lots of little co-ops raising all this working capital each time. If there's a sort of collective way of meeting the regulatory requirements, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very good point, Stuart. And I do think that there's scope to explore that space. You know, some of the stuff that John Roberts was talking about yesterday, I think, about their relationship with the CQC. I do think that CQC's ears and eyes are open, and they seem to be very willing to explore innovative approaches, I think, on some of this stuff.
Could I just correct Stuart? It began as machinery rings, Stuart. It immediately moved on to pools of contractors, collective buying of fuel, collective buying of fertilizer, collective buying of services. It began with the machinery sharing, but where it went is precisely into the areas of working capital that you're talking about. When we then took in what I'm working on with Graham and others of mutual credit, that's when it gets really interesting, isn't it, Graham? But I won't go there now.
Yeah, for another time. Thanks. Right, we're sort of running up against the buffers. I just want to finish up before we do stop, just with a couple of quick comments. So as well as that web resource that we're developing, and we're very, very keen for people to engage with that, we also operate, we recognize the value of these conversations enormously, but obviously, like a face-to-face conference, you can't do this stuff all the time. We'd all fall over with fatigue, I think, if that was the case. But it's really important to try and maintain the conversation at a more gentle pace, perhaps, between the times when we can get together using Zoom or in a physical venue. So we've got a little workspace, chat space thing that we have set up using Slack. I don't know if some people might be familiar with that. It's just a sort of an online chat facility where you don't have to remember everyone's email address all the time, and you can just sort of get on and exchange some stuff. So what I will do is share an invite link to that so that we can continue the conversation after these webinars have finished, and hopefully that will help as part of the mix to sort of continue our development and our coalescence, if you want, as this sort of group, this nascent network federation that we're developing here. So that's all I wanted to say, really. Please engage with that resource. Let me know if you want to have a user account there and start contributing some stuff. If you've got comments or criticisms, we're all ears. We want to have that input. So thanks very much for your time. I'll hand you back to Veronica now, and look forward to the next session with Sean, who I can see has joined us. Great.